Notes 1.7, isolating variables. So let's just think about what that word isolating means, or to isolate. So to isolate means to be alone, okay, or to get by itself. So that's what we're going to do with these variables. That's what we do when we solve any equation, because we always get x alone. So let's take a look at something we're familiar with, this equation 2x plus 3 equals 9. So if I were to ask you to solve for x, you know the steps that you need to take to solve for x, and that means you just isolated that variable. You got x by itself and found out what it equals, and it equals 3. So I can do that same thing in these equations over here, and these are called literal equations. So a standard equation has one variable, but a literal equation has more than one variable or letter. Okay, so more than one letter. So if I were to have this equation ax plus b equals c, and I asked you to solve for x, so essentially doing the same thing that I asked you over here, but now just with letters. So I'm still going to start the process out the same way. I'm going to subtract b from both sides. I'm going to get ax equals, and I'm just going to write what I see, c minus b. And if I need to solve for x or isolate x, I'm going to have to divide everything by a. So I can be left with, and now I'm going to give everything its own denominator, c over a minus b over a. I just solved for x. X just happens to equal something that's a little stranger than what we're used to looking at. But that is our answer. X is isolated, or we solved for x. So the directions for 1 through 8 say isolate y. In other words, solve this equation for y. Get y all by itself. So this one's fairly straightforward. To get y by itself, I've just got to subtract 4 from both sides. And I end up with y equals, we put the x term first, 2x minus 4. I can't combine those because they're not like terms. Y is all by itself. I did what was asked. In number 2, same thing. If I'm going to isolate y, because those are my directions back here, I would add 4 to both sides, and I'm left with y equals, put the x term first, 2x plus 4. Y is all by itself. Taking a look at number 3, to isolate y, how is that 2 attached to the y? If I want to get y by itself, I've got to divide everything by 2. So y is equal to, I'm going to give everything its own denominator, 10x divided by 2 plus 8 divided by 2. Now I can simplify this. What is 10 divided by 2? That becomes 5x plus 8 divided by 2. I can simplify that, 4. So my final answer in simplest form is y equals 5x plus 4. In number 4, again, to isolate y, I'm going to have to subtract x first, because I can't divide by 2 yet because I still have that x over there. So I have 2y equals, put the x term first, and now it's a minus x. And what's the sign of that 14? If nothing is written there, it's a plus 14. To get y by itself, I've got to divide everything by 2. So if I give everything its own denominator, negative x divided by 2 plus 14 divided by 2, and now I can simplify. That negative x, really that's a negative 1x divided by 2, plus, and then 14 divided by 2 is a nice 7. I just isolated y all by itself. In number 5, watch what I'm going to do in number 5. Y is right here and it's a negative y. Watch what I can do. If I add y to both sides, that's something different. I'm left with x equals, put the variable first, y plus 7. Let's see if I can get that out of there. Can't seem to, there we go. And if I need to continue to get, I need to solve for y if I subtract 7. So I just did things in a little bit of a different way. But y is equal to, put the x term first, minus 7. I just did that in a different way, but it's still good math. All right. Let's see, this one we could subtract 4x from both sides. Oops, sorry about that. Where'd my cursor go? There we are. Negative 3y equals, put the x term first. And now to get y by itself, I've got to divide everything by negative 3. So let's give everything its own denominator. Y is equal to negative 4/3 x plus 24, whoops, that's a negative, divided by negative 3. So what's a negative divided by a negative? And that becomes a positive. We're going to leave that 4/3 as an improper fraction. So we're just going to simplify it to a positive 4/3 x because a negative divided by a negative is positive. Now positive 24 divided by negative 3 is negative 8. I isolated y, meaning I got y all by itself. A couple more. Now in number 7, to isolate y, I'm going to have to distribute first. X is equal to 12 minus 4y. Now, I might choose, maybe I might add 4y to both sides. Follow along with what I'm doing. Still doing all good stuff. Nothing illegal here mathematically. Equals 12. Now, keep in mind, what are we trying to do? We're trying to isolate y. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. So I've got 4y equals, put the x term first, negative x. There's no sign in front of the 12, so we assume that it's a positive 12. Now to get y by itself, I'm going to divide everything by 4. So y is equal to, now let's give everything its own denominator. I made that a negative 1. I just put that negative 1 there. Plus 12 divided by 4. Now let's simplify. Y equals negative 1/4. I can't simplify that. That's all in simplest terms. And then 12 divided by 4, that becomes a positive 3. Then in this last one, in number 8, let's do the same thing that I did back here. Let's move the y. Why am I doing that? Because see how that y is negative? Sometimes it just makes it easier if our y is positive. Just makes our life a little bit easier. I can get rid of that. Okay, I can't. So I'm going to move my work down here. Oops. Let's see, there we go. I'm going to move my work down here after this little rainbow. So 7x equals, put the variable term first, 2y minus 22. Now let's divide everything by 7. So if I simplify, I got to back up on that one. Let's back up. Got to erase. I made a mistake. We're okay. So we have 7x equals 2y minus 22. I forgot what we were solving for. Remember, we're solving for y. So add 22 to both sides. Okay, if you needed to pause the video to erase your work, that's fine. 7x plus 22 equals 2y. And then if we're going to isolate y, we've got to divide everything by 2. Y is equal to, let's give everything a common denominator. Let's give everything that 2. And now let's simplify any fractions. So y is equal to 7/2. We're going to leave it as the improper fraction. No need for a mixed number or a decimal. 7/2 x. And then 22 divided by 2 is going to be 11. So y is all by itself and positive. Circle this one or put a box around that one that we finished. So we're going to spend an awful lot of time isolating for y because that's going to help us in our next unit when we go to graph these lines.